Support for WMNF comes from listeners like you and TEDx Carrollwood, featuring Held Together, an independently organized TED event exploring resilience, storytelling, and community. Happening March 7th from 2 to 5 p.m. at USF's Oval Theater. More information is available at TEDxCarrollwood.com.
Welcome to True Talk on WMNF 88.5 with Ahmed and Samar. On today's program, we're going to continue talking about the Sharia scare that's happening across the country by politicians. Pretty much manufactured. This manufacturing fear of Muslims, scapegoating them. It's happening in Florida. It's happening in Texas. It's happening in a lot of places. Who's behind it? Why is it happening now? Just this week alone, there was a committee hearing in Washington, D.C., the Capitol and Congress, in the House of Representatives, at the House Committee on the Judiciary. It was titled Sharia Free America, Why Political Islam and Sharia Law Are Incompatible with the U.S. Constitution. And it's just crazy, the amount of anti-Muslim hysteria that politicians, mostly on the right, are pushing out there, but a lot of people are pushing it. Some on the left, some Democrats are also joining in, and that's also continuing in Florida. Just this week, a bill was passed in the state capital in Florida against or renaming the West Bank, the area known in Palestine as the West Bank, renaming it to Judea and Samaria. The first state in the country to do anything like that, just renaming other parts of the world that doesn't belong to Florida. Even the U.S. Federal government doesn't do that. But I'm joined by my co-host, Samar Jarrah, and we're going to get into some of those conversations and others. Welcome to the show, Samar.
Assalamu alaikum, Ahmed. Welcome to the show too, and welcome to our listeners. And I think, Ahmed, we need to mention that in a couple of weeks we're going to be fundraising for WMNF.
Is it a couple of weeks or just 1 week? No, isn't it next week?
Oh my gosh, it's next week.
We'll have to double check.
Yes,
a week from today we're going to be doing our fund drive here. So, our passionate listeners or our supporters, make sure you tune in next Thursday to help us. As you know, True Talk is listener supported, and we need your contributions to WMNF to remain on the air. It's a commercial-free radio station. We don't get sponsorships or funding from companies or corporations, and that's how the station stays on the air. So we're going to need your support next Thursday.
Yes, I think the fund drive starts on the 18th, and we are the 19th, and we should break records on that day, Ahmed, because we're required to raise lots of money. But I'm sure our listeners will pull through and help us, and help WMNF, actually, because there is hardly any discussion when it comes to mainstream media, even with issues not related to the Arab world or the Muslim world, but the way they deal with the Epstein files, the political aspect of it, the connections that Epstein did, and the web of connections with influencing policy all over the world, including the Arab world, even in the occupied territories and in Palestine and Israel. So really, there isn't much vibrant discussion on our mainstream media. So WMNF needs to stay on the air and needs to be supported.
Right. Something else that's breaking news that's happening that I actually discussed at length before here on the show, especially the few weeks that you were gone, as there are elements within the U.S. government that are beating the drums to war in Iran and saying that the United States has to support the protesters in Iran, and that Iran is killing protesters. And it is true that Iran did kill some protesters. No one can deny that. And I'm not a fan or a supporter of the Iran regime at all. And I don't think Samar is either. However, I'm also opposed to the United States military intervention in any of these countries, even if they are uprising or having their own revolution. If countries, whether they're friends or foes, want to overthrow their governments, let the people do it on their own. It has to be organic. It has to be local. And it cannot have outside intervention. And it's not really a revolution. If people want to revolt and overthrow their governments and replace it because they're authoritarian or dictatorships or unjust, they have every right to do that. But they have to do it themselves. They cannot do it with our military support or our CIA support. Then it becomes a coup. And not a coup, but a regime change. A coup, I guess, would be more of a military coup. I'm also against military coups. So I am for, citizens rising up if they want to replace their government and choose democratic futures for self-determination. I'm opposed to international intervention and regime change from abroad. I'm also opposed to military coups, where if a government was elected by its people and then the military decides to overthrow what the people chose for whatever reason. And we saw a lot of those images happening in Iran and the protests and the riots, and it was a lot more violent than usual. And Iran was saying, well, we're cracking down hard because a lot of these people there are foreign elements, there are spies, there are Mossad agents. Even the former CIA head and the former Secretary of State, Mike Pompeo, had said that he's standing with the people of Iran and the Mossad agents that are with them in the streets. And this is the former Secretary of State. I think he knows a thing or two about what's happening around the world. And he was acknowledging and confirming that Mossad agents were on the streets in Iran trying to topple the regime. And then one thing specific, I'm bringing all this up now, because one thing specific, at the time when it happened, and I shared it with some people privately, and I may have talked about it on the radio show, how people were praising Elon Musk and Starlink, his service Starlink, which is a satellite-provided internet service, of providing free internet to dissidents and protesters on the streets in Tehran and in Iran. And at the time, I told people that Starlink, the way it works is you can't just pick up, it's not like you can just start using your phone and connect to Starlink. You have to have a certain type of proprietary dish that you can only get from Starlink itself, and it was never available in Iran. So any of those devices, or terminals they call them, that are in the country must have been smuggled in. It's not like Starlink was already a service available to the people and then Elon Musk made it free. Somehow somebody smuggled those units in there, and they were making it was more likely a military operation. Well, today, for the first time, the Wall Street Journal is reporting that an exclusive report that says the United States smuggled thousands of Starlink terminals into Iran after protest crackdown. The Trump administration had denied fomenting public unrest in Iran, but the operation shows it has provided covert support to anti-regime efforts. And probably they also provided, support to, spies that were in the country that are trying to foment this. And for some reason, they didn't expect that the Iranian regime would be able to get a grip on the situation. And if you remember that, Trump was on the verge of attacking, but decided at the end not to, because there was no guarantee that bombing Iran would actually lead to the collapse of the regime. Did I ever mention this to you or send this to you before? About the Starlink devices that Elon Musk was not some sort of pro-democracy person. He's actually doing this with the United States or some sort of spy elements.
Yes, actually, I saw it, Ahmed, when I was visiting Cairo, and I saw the interview with Pompeo. He's the one who mentioned that we have agents in Iran working, and I don't know if it was a slip by him or he meant for us to know, or he was addressing the Iranian people. But yes, I saw that, and it didn't go through. And you know what's the sad thing is that there is always a genuine attempt by oppressed people or people who don't like their authoritarian systems to rise up. Once there is a foreign intervention, it becomes an excuse for the local government, the authoritarian government, to clamp down on these genuine homegrown attempts to get rid of their oppressor systems. So it's counter-effective. And I don't know where do they get this genius ideas that if you jump on a genuine attempt by people to get rid or create change in their societies is going to be successful. Because people will not go against their own regime to be occupied by a foreign one. Because they have seen what happens when America gets involved in popular uprisings. It ruins it. It destroys it. And it installs very people who are authoritarian. Maybe they are, they look less authoritarian to the Western media and Western audience, but they are still authoritarian systems.
Well, they may look like, there are more freedoms. Maybe it appeared like they have cinemas, they have arts, they have, they start letting in concerts by Nicki Minaj or, comedy shows and importing and opening American franchises and businesses. But is that the measure of freedom? But meanwhile, they have all that, but they can't speak out against corruption, injustice, that they don't have the same opportunity as the wealthy, that they don't have the same educational opportunities. And if they speak out or complain about anything, they disappear. Well, what kind of freedom is that? And it seems like that's the type of, Western style democracy that a lot of U.S. Elements within administration that they want to do, have an authoritarian person, because it's for them. From the American perspective, I'm not saying all Americans are like this. I'm saying the people that have, this foreign policy establishment, that they'd rather deal with one strongman than all these politicians in different political parties. It's a lot harder to get them to go along with your agenda if you have to deal with a few hundred people and, civil society, rather than just dealing with one strongman that controls everything.
And there are two other things, Ahmed. One, I will keep, let me talk about the smaller one, is putting forth the son of the Shah of Iran is the alternative for the Iranian people. And he is just simply not popular.
But you would not believe that. You would not see that if you're watching the media in the West, that they kept pushing this guy. He was appearing on CNN. He was appearing on all the mainstream media as if that is the legitimate leader when he left, I think, when he was like 6 or 7 with his father. There's no more monarchy.
He was around 18, and he went to the same. 18. He came to the AUC, the American University in Cairo, when I was starting my first year, and he was starting his first year. So he was about.
So were you there at the same time as him? You saw him there?
Yeah. I saw him, and he used to attend the classes, and I bumped into him one time, believe it or not. He seemed like a very nice, down-to-earth human being. He had 2 Egyptian bodyguards. And at the same time, I think he stayed 1 semester, and then he went to the U.S. I'm not sure if he felt safer being in the U.S. than being in Cairo. But he's not popular. And there is this slant where there are images of him at the Wailing Wall with the yarmulke on his head. Okay, you are a Muslim. Your country is mainly made up of majority Muslim population. Why do you have to express your love for Israel that had just bombed your country and killed people there? What makes this guy and people in power in the US think that Iranians are dumb or stupid or will accept a guy who is showing so much connection to the very nation that bombed them and killed their scientists. I mean, it boggles my mind, Ahmed. The other thing is this obsession with women and women's bodies, and the idea that freedom means nakedness, or freedom means showing my hair, or freedom means wearing a bikini. Freedom of women means empowerment, means education, means participating in all aspects of society. So again, when you are an Iranian woman or an Egyptian woman or a Saudi woman, this is not what I want. I don't want to wear less clothing. I want to be empowered. I want to be maybe the president of Egypt and the president of Iran and the vice president, as it happened in Iran a few years ago. So this obsession with showing a Zionist connection or an Israeli connection, and the obsession of women's bodies being naked, not mentally empowered, is just not working. Not working. I don't know what you think.
Yeah, it is not working, and it was attempted. We've seen it in Iraq. We've seen it in Afghanistan. 20 years of war in Afghanistan. Thousands, hundreds, if not thousands, of American troops killed. Of course, hundreds of thousands of Afghani people killed. And what did it accomplish at the end? Afghanistan was taken back by the very same people that were overthrown 20 years earlier. What did that achieve? It achieved absolutely nothing except more violence in the world, and the world less secure, more terrorism, and suffering across the whole nation. But, weapons manufacturers benefited a great deal. Intelligence agencies benefited a great deal. I mean, NATO was established to keep a check on the Soviet Union during the Cold War, but the only time that NATO was actually deployed for any of the nations was to help the United States in, Afghanistan and carry out that war. It achieved absolutely nothing. It created more backlash for the United States, and even at the end, whenever, the whole idea was, they wanted to go in and capture bin Laden because of 9/11. But then where was bin Laden actually killed or captured? He was killed. It was in Pakistan. And how was it done? It was not through aerial bombings. It was not through war. It was through a clandestine operation where they tracked him down, found out where he is, and picked him up. I mean, they had a firefight and he was killed, allegedly, and then, he was buried at sea. How did they capture Maduro? They went in with an operation, in and out within a few hours. Our military is capable, if it's true that they actually want to, capture the bad guy, they can do it without full-out war. If they wanted to get Saddam Hussein in Iraq, they could have done the same thing. But that's not the agenda. That's not the agenda. And it doesn't benefit the military-industrial complex. And when it specifically comes to Iraq, that wasn't the agenda of the government of Israel and Netanyahu at the time, who were heavily lobbying and pushing for the war in Iraq. They were upset, the Israeli government at the time, or elements within the Israeli government, that George Bush the first did not continue in the first Gulf War to go all the way and topple Saddam and take over the country. And when George W. Bush came in, they wanted him to finish the job. And that was even before he came in. He was surrounded by Dick Cheney, Rumsfeld, Paul Wolfowitz, and other what are described as neocons who exploited the events of 9/11, the tragic events of 9/11, when our country was attacked. None of the people, the hijackers, alleged hijackers, were from Iraq or Afghanistan, but they exploited that. to go after Iraq when Iraq had nothing to do with 9/11. And there was all these allegations about weapons of mass destruction, all turned out to be lies. And we still have a fallout, a quarter of a century later of what happened, the invasion of Iraq and Afghanistan and other places. So they're trying to do the same thing again with Iran. And the Shah of Iran, in fact, the Shah of Iran, as you know, and some of our listeners know, was actually installed by the United States and Britain after they overthrew Iran's, democratically elected prime minister, Mossadegh, in 1953. He was replaced by the Shah, who ruled from 53 until 79, and he was a dictator. But even though he was a dictator, he was still not necessarily, he was a dictator for his own self, and he cracked down hard on the Iranian people and, would not allow religious freedom. And that's why when he was overthrown, Iran, through the time he was there, the only way people in Iran were able to protest was by becoming more and more religiously, conservative. So it was a reaction to what the Shah was doing, because it was opposite from what the Shah of Iran was pushing to. But even the Shah of Iran, and I don't know if you heard that, even before, the Shah of Iran was not necessarily pro-Israel. He warned about the power of the Jewish lobby, and saying that even it was even harmful to Israel's interest. Did you ever watch that clip before?
I think, yes, he was on 60 Minutes. And he
60 Minutes. Let me see if I can find
what's the name of the very famous American
Wallace,
and Wallace was looking at him and wondering,
he was shocked. He was like, "Your Highness, come on." This is
the guy we are helping, but it's a double-edged relationship, because the Savak, his intelligence, the local, let's say, as if it's the FBI.
Who's he? The Shah's?
The Shah Sabak, he had intelligence, internal intelligence force that tortured people and killed them, and they were trained by Israel. So I was shocked, actually, when I saw this interview on 60 Minutes. Really
here's a clip of it.
Surely, Your Majesty, you're not telling me that the Jewish lobby in the United States pulls the strings of the presidency. Surely, Your Majesty, you're not telling me that the Jewish...
Let me see.
The Palestinians obviously had the sympathy of many, many people.
Surely, Your Majesty, you're not telling me that the Jewish lobby in the United States pulls the strings of the presidency.
Not entirely, but I think even a little too much, even for Israel interests.
You think the Jewish lobby in the United States is too powerful for the interests of Israel?
I think so. Sometimes they are disserving the interests of Israel because they're pushing around too many people.
Why would the President of the United States pay attention to that lobby?
They are strong.
Strong in what sense?
They are controlling many things.
Controlling what?
Newspapers, medias,
Your Majesty.
Banks, finances, and I'm going to stop there.
Well, now wait.
And we will also stop there. Now, Samar, the concern is these are the words of the Shah of Iran, who was an ally of the United States. And now, his son, who's also an ally of the United States and an ally of Israel. Those are the views of that Shah who led Iran. And he gave this interview in the 70s, decades before. And he was calling out the Jewish lobby. Now, before people start saying, Ahmed and Samar are playing anti-Semitic stuff, this is a historical record. We're just sharing what the Shah of Iran actually said, not about Jewish people, but the lobby. And he was even saying that they are even harming the interests of Israel itself. And you could see, today, in today's world, perception of Israel around the world is an all-time low. Mm-hmm. People, especially after the genocide that we saw in Gaza. And this is something that's constant, and even it was on display at this hearing, which people can go look up. There was, the president has, or there's a a commission on religious liberties or freedoms that the White House actually appoints committee members to. And there was a summit this week that they put on anti-Semitism. And there were fireworks playing there because there were some people who were Christian that are in the commission that were questioning some of the Zionists that were coming to say basically they're trying to assert that the definition of anti-Semitism should include if you criticize Israel, that is a form of anti-Semitism. And some people were pushing back saying that's not true. So this debate is happening now. Is this push by the lobby and by others to try to say that any criticism of the state of Israel is considered to be anti-Semitism? Or now some people call it Jew hatred. So there's nothing about our show that is anti-Semitic or any form of that. Samar and I, we respect the Jewish people and religion of Judaism, but of the opinion, like many other, including Jewish leaders and rabbis, that don't subscribe to say, Zionism is a political agenda and you can be opposed to it, and it's not connected to the religion of Judaism or the Jewish people.
Yes, and our constitution actually requires us to separate religion from politics and politics from religion. So we should not be using religion to explain foreign policy or to explain loyalty. For instance, you or I both Semite, we speak Arabic, we are of the Semitic languages. So then, okay, if I am opposing a regime in the Arab world, does that make me anti-Semitic too? If I am against overthrowing, I don't want to mention an Arab country's name, but let's say Morocco or Egypt or Sudan, does that make me anti-Semitic too?
Well, for some reason, they kind of, some people have monopolized the word Semitic to only reference a specific, very narrow perspective of who is defined as Semitic, and somehow they reversed it to say that Eastern European Jewish people are the Semites, and not all. Like that's the ultimate level, because even within Israel, like they have a class system, or almost like a caste system, that the highest people there that are looked up to are the white Europeans that came from Eastern Europe. Jewish people that migrated there from Poland and Germany and Ukraine and Russia. And then the Sephardic Jews are less, and the Mizrahi Jews are less. So, and then the black Jews from Ethiopia and others are even, at the bottom. But somehow when they talk about anti-Semitism, it's applying to people like Netanyahu, whose name is not Netanyahu. He has some Polish name. But Semites and Semitic languages, you could look it up, how it's defined, and it includes people that are Arab, and it includes the people of the tribes of Israel. They're called the tribes of Israel because their Jacob, other name was also Israel. So it's basically the children of Israel, or the 12 tribes of Jacob, are the same as the 12 tribes of Israel, and that's Semitic. But there's a lot of research within Israel itself that says the majority of the children of Israel, based on DNA, have actually converted and became the Palestinians. They became the Arabs. There's a lot of mixing. And those people that were originally children of Israel, the original tribes, most of them are now Muslim, and they were inhabiting that land. So I know it's kind of confusing, but I think some of our listeners understand what I'm saying.
Yes, I think so. Ahmed, actually, I'm looking at some disturbing news, but it's breaking news. And this is, I don't know if people know what is Poly Market, but I think it's where you can bet.
I know what it is.
Okay.
It's a new form of, basically, before you can bet on sports games or other things, but now Poly Markets, it's like another word for like public affairs or news casino. You can basically bet on any event. You can even bet on the weather, or you can say, is Trump gonna remain in office for a third term? Is the stock market going to go up or down? Is Pam Bondi, when she was testifying in front of the Congress yesterday, is she going to say certain words? So people can bet on that. Is the President Maduro going to stay president beyond a certain date? Will the Shah or the leader of Iran collapse, by a certain date? So yeah, it becomes like a betting thing.
Okay, so it's a legitimate. It's not like a dark web, is it? It's a
no. It was. It is legitimate markets now. The original. There are two main companies that do this, but others are growing. But before, at some point there, the main company, Polymarkets, I think it's called, or the name of it, was raided by the FBI or the SEC, and they were being investigated. But after Trump came in office, all those investigations went away, and they've now become very mainstream and growing rapidly. So yeah, it's not dark web. Anyone can join it. It's not illegal to do that now.
Okay, so the news that Israeli soldiers are accused of using Polymarket to bet on strikes. And there is an internal security agency investigation where these soldiers would use the information, the secret information that they have because of their jobs as soldiers or leaders, and they would inform their wagers, like not the soldier himself, but would give the information and do the waging. And one particular one, and this is an ongoing investigation, made $150,000 last year on Polymarket trading on the war between Israel and Iran. So, I mean, every day you listen to news and you think, this can't be real, but it is real. How much evil there is out there. I'm looking now just at this break.
Yeah, I see it, that two indicted for using classified info to place online bets on military operations. And something similar happened, by the way, when Maduro was arrested. There was a Polymarket where people were basically saying, is Maduro going to last until I guess the end of January or something, and people were betting. And one guy specifically, and it's anonymous, and they don't know who it is, made very decisive bets, even hours, big bets, hours before he was abducted and brought to the United States, before Maduro was, and people were trying to, basically saying this person must have had insider information. And until now, I don't think that, it was disclosed. So it could very well be somebody within, the government knew that something's about to happen. Now, we should say that the two indicted individuals, Israeli soldiers, were indicted in Israel, not in the United States, for using this classified information to do that. And now Polymarkets some people that support Polymarkets in this whole idea, because they're basically saying that Polymarkets and this type of betting is actually very honest, and it's a good way to see better than polling, because people have to put their money behind it. If they're going to wager something, and they say they don't mind as much insider trading people, because the founders of Polymarket, I guess the founders saying they tolerate that kind of stuff because it gives you a real true picture of what's going to happen. I mean, who better to know if a strike is going to happen than soldiers are going to carrying it out? But of course, it's unethical and it's a disadvantage to use that information to make money off it. That is, next level, truly evil. Because the other thing is, what you could do is place a market. Let's say there's no plan to attack. And then you place a bet, and somehow, because of your position of power, you make sure an attack does take place on something or on that day. So now you're manipulating it for profit, and then at the expense of people suffering. So definitely it can be exploited. But the thing is, a lot of these markets that were, the government was trying to regulate or trying to investigate, it's like the Wild West now. Anything goes, especially if it's money driven, cryptocurrency, whatever else. Like there are no regulations on these things.
Are you following, Ahmed, to move on to, again, because I'm looking at the feed, are you following the new young American young men and women running for election? And when they do, they specifically mention that they're not getting any money from AIPAC, the Israeli or the Jewish lobby. So, for instance, there is Reed Showalter, and he's a candidate for Illinois District 7 and running for the U.S. House. And there is another lady also in Illinois, her name Annabella Mendoza, and both of them, part of their campaign is mentioning that they are not going to take money from the Israeli lobby. And I think there is at least another 4 or 5 of them running different places, not only in Illinois. I know there is one in Florida or 2 in Florida that are running. Are you following these things?
Yes, I'm following those things, and this is a good segue for the next topic we wanted to get into. But to answer your question, there are a growing number of candidates that are running, both Democrats and Republicans, that are saying they're against AIPAC. And it's not necessarily, some of them, yes, some of them are legit. Some of them have a long history of being opposed to, for example, the genocide in Gaza, and opposed to the apartheid in Israel. I mean, the Israeli apartheid on Palestine, and they've been outspoken. But some of them are also just politicians that are being opportunist, because now it's not popular. It's actually toxic to take AIPAC money. And just this last week in New Jersey, there was a special election there in New Jersey for one of the congressional districts, because the member that was in that district went on and won the governor race last November. So they had a special election to replace her. And that election is still happening, but it's a very Democratic district, meaning whoever won the Democratic primary is very likely to become to win the general, which is going to be next month. So last week, the general election or the primary election to choose a Democrat happened, and it had something like 11 members, and the person that emerged as the leader or as the winner of that primary by maybe some 900 votes was Anilia Magia. She was the co-executive director of the Center for Popular Democracy. She worked on the Bernie Sanders campaign, and she shocked everybody because she didn't have as much money as the others, and she defeated 2 people that were strong contenders. One of them was Tom Malinowski, who was actually a former congressperson, and she also defeated the AIPAC favorite in the race. And part of it is because, and she was, they had this one candidate forum, and they asked, and that's some of the candidate forums now for Congress, they'll ask them this question. If they have multiple candidates, and they'll say, raise your hand if you believe that there was a genocide in Gaza. And out of all the 11 people on the stage, only she raised her hand at the time. Everyone else did not raise their hand, and she ended up becoming the winner. Not only did she not take AIPAC money, she was attacked by AIPAC. But one thing that benefited her is that AIPAC actually made a strategic mistake. They pumped a lot of money behind one of the candidates, who was the former, I think, lieutenant governor in New Jersey, but ran most of their ads, millions of dollars of ads of money, against Tom Malinowski, because they thought he was the biggest threat, and he was not pro-Israel enough, even though he himself is actually pro-Israel, but he wasn't enough. He's more of a left-leaning pro-Israel, not right-wing enough, and they ran a lot of tax ads against him. So he ended up, it ended up hurting him. And the one that emerged as a winner was Anilia Magia. So people are seeing that and saying, well, that's the recipe to win. Don't take AIPAC money.
Okay, so Did you
So
say
it's
that?
becoming more and more. It's becoming more and more that AIPAC money is actually toxic, and they're finding. But one thing that's important to note, when they run these ads like they did against Malinowski, they don't say, "Oh, he doesn't support Israel. Stand with Israel." No, they ran ads saying that that he supported Trump's immigration. He's with Trump on immigration because, again, this is a Democratic primary. So they were like criticizing him, the ads, that he's for that he was with Trump on supporting anti-immigration initiatives, when it's really not true. Now, if this was a Republican, on the Republican side, they'll go the other way. So they're not pushing ads. These AIPAC affiliated PACs, they're not pushing that these people are not good for Israel. They're using like local issues that they think they can hurt the politician in that district.
Quite interesting, Ahmed. Did you have something you wanted to play today?
Yeah, so I wanted to play a couple of things which I started the show with, and maybe we'll just shift to that topic. So in Congress, we're seeing members of Congress and the Senate are just going berserk and hysterical with their anti-Muslim stuff. And, we live in a society where we have the First Amendment. The First Amendment guarantees freedom of religion, the Establishment Clause. Government cannot establish a religion and cannot oppose a religion. They basically have to stay out of religion. And there's a separation between church and state. But there's a growing number of members in Congress, on the House and the Senate, that are specifically targeting Muslims, not all religions. And they started something called the Anti-Islam Caucus. Imagine, like, you're not supposed to be getting involved in religion, and you start a caucus, which is basically like kind of a group of lawmakers that agree on a specific cause, and they call it the Anti-Islam or Anti-Sharia Caucus. And they basically tell Representative Ilhan Omar, go back home. And this is a conference from a press conference that happened. And this is Tommy Tuberville, and joined behind him is Randy Fine and other anti-Muslim lawmakers that are simply just keep doing this as if Islam is their biggest problem in America, which they're just manufacturing this. So I wanted to play this. And then there was also a hearing just 2 days ago in the Judiciary Committee in the House, saying how that we need to have a Sharia-free America. So let me just play that and then maybe get your reaction. Here it is.
The enemy is inside the gates. Islamic extremism is infiltrating the U.S. and refusing to assimilate. The Quran instructs them to kill all infidels. It specifically encourages them to behead all infidels. If you're not a Muslim, they don't want you here. It provides clear instructions about how they are to steal from non-Muslims. It's no wonder that a group of Somalians have been accused of stealing, 18 billion to this point, and growing, as President Trump says. Woke cities like Michigan, Minnesota, and New Jersey are replacing American civic norms with radical Islamic policies. If people like Ilhan Omar love this way of life back home, why don't you just move the hell back? This is our country. The press can call me an Islamophobe all they want. I don't care. It doesn't make me any difference. I love this country. I love what it stands for. I love that it's a Christian nation, and it's going to stay that way. Because if we don't do it, in the very near future, we're going to look like Europe. We're going to look like some of these other countries that have lost their way of life.
Ahmed.
Yes.
Let's say the Quran says that Muslims should kill all the infidels and non-Muslims. And how on earth there is Christianity handed to the world? There is still Christianity in the Arab world. There are Coptics in Egypt. Why aren't Muslims really following the teachings of their religion? It is so simple to answer these questions. He doesn't seem like a very well-read human being, but
he's a senator. He is a senator in the United States, not even a member of Congress. His term is 6 years. This is a senator.
He can just Google, let's say it's written in the Quran. Okay, the Quran is sold in every single bookstore. It's not like a secret book that we do not share. So why aren't you and I, who are going to be fasting Ramadan and praying and reading the Quran, not following it, Ahmed?
Samar, I think he knows this is not true, obviously. That was Senator Tommy Tuberville. He's one of the biggest anti-Muslim haters and violating the U.S. Constitution. The U.S. Constitution says, keep out of our religion. Keep out, there's separation. So get Islam out of your mouth. Like, why are you even talking? Why are you even quoting the Quran? This is clearly a violation, and they're stoking hatred, incitement against Muslims. Everything he basically said is a lie.
And
He
where
instructs
does
us to
it
behead.
say-
Why aren't you beheading anyone, Samar? Like, what's going on?
Yeah.
No, there's 3 million Muslims all over the country. Muslims are not committing all the crime. What are you talking about?
Well, I mean, let's go to Muslim nations like Indonesia or Saudi Arabia or the rest of the Arab countries. But this thing about stealing, I mean, people make very negative comments about Islam because in Islam, the hudud, the punishment for stealing is cutting your hand. So where does it say that it allows Muslims to steal?
He's trying to say it allows them to steal from non-Muslims, which is false,
and
a
where
lie.
does
It doesn't say it anywhere, and he's just misquoting because he's relying on the people not knowing what the Quran says. All of these are lies. But what's behind it? Why are they do? They know this is not true. But there was an article in Politico that says that, expect to see a lot more of this in this election cycle. Especially on the Republican side, Republicans, they're expecting to lose, and all these attacks by ICE and authoritarianism and the lack of rule of law, and what Trump is doing is hurting Republicans. And of course, after the Gaza war, the genocide in Gaza, there's a lot of backlash against these type of politicians that have been in bed with AIPAC. So AIPAC is pushing a lot of these talking points. Republicans are pushing, basically to divert attention. And also from the Epstein issue, to divert attention that somehow Islam is the threat. Sharia is the threat to you guys. You have to elect us because we're the strongest against Islam, because Islam is the problem. Actually, what all they're doing is just manufacturing a problem that doesn't exist. Muslims make up 1% of the population. We are not going to take over. We don't have the power to take over. And even if we did, there's no way, there's no chance that, that somehow in any time in the near, hundreds of years that, Muslims are going to dominate and take over everything. That is not on the horizon. But even in, like you said, in Muslim majority countries where Muslims are 99% of the population, you can go there and find some of the oldest churches, some of the oldest synagogues, even in Iran. The hostile, Iran that America keeps wanting to, they have, that Israel bombed, they have a Jewish population. It's smaller than it used to be, but they have a Jewish population. They have a synagogue. Why aren't they taking all those people and beheading them and killing them and holding them hostage? Because those are people from Iran. These are Iranian people that are also Jewish that are living there. It's like, it's nuts.
They have people who believe in ancient religions outside the Abrahamic faith, outside Judaism, Christianity, and Islam, and they live in Iran and practice the religion, which some Muslims might.
Zoroastrians, yeah, they're like fire worshippers, right?
Yeah. So I mean, they worship the fire, which is like so totally different than Judaism, Christianity, and Islam, because we all believe in the concept concept of God, whether one God or God and Jesus and the angel, it doesn't matter, but we have a totally different, the three of us, Christian, Muslims, and Jews, a totally different concept of religion. And
Samar, just to correct something, it's not in Christianity, and I'm sure you didn't mean this, it's not God, Jesus, and the angel, and the Holy Spirit, which they don't necessarily think it's the angel. You said, and the angel. So, the Trinity concept in Christianity, as you know, but I think you just misspoke, but meaning that these are the three monotheistic faith. And in fact, the three monotheistic faith, Christianity, Judaism, and Islam, are considered and recognized in the Quran as what's called, people of the book, meaning they received sacred revelation from the same God. We as Muslims believe we worship the same God as the God of Jesus, the God of Moses, the God of the Torah, the God of the Bible. We believe in that same God. Our perspective on that God is that it's one eternal, God. God is one. The same kind of concept of God in the Old Testament, not the Trinity concept of God, where there's God and the Son and the Holy Spirit are one together. So that's our belief. But there was, I don't think we have a lot more time, but there was another committee hearing, because I didn't want to just say that there was just one crazy senator. That this was actually this week in the judiciary, House of the Judiciary, another hearing titled Sharia Free America. So these people are doubling down. I'm just going to play 30 seconds of it just so you can hear it for yourself, and you guys can go out and listen to it or watch it on YouTube.
The chair is authorized to declare a recess at any time. We welcome everyone to today's hearing on Sharia law in America. I will now recognize myself for an opening statement. There's a movement afoot across the United States that seeks to overthrow our legal system and the Constitution to replace it with a foreign legal system that upends our American way of life. It seeks to replace these foundational elements of our constitutional order with Islamic law, known as Sharia. The principles of Sharia are at odds with the Constitution and the laws of the United States. Sharia fails to include due process, treats non-Muslims as second-class citizens, and prescribes barbaric punishments. All the while, polygamy, misguided corporal punishment for perceived violations of Islam, and acts of violence and terrorism on behalf of Sharia are permitted by its adherents. Sharia encourages violence, silences dissent, rejects religious freedom, and subjugates women and children. Let's be clear. This is not about having the freedom of worshiping a religion of one's choosing, such as Islam, but forcing a foreign legal code that is incompatible with our laws and legal system that provides unwanted consequences to the American people.
So where is it happening? Like, is it...
where is it happening?
Well, they don't give examples, but the only thing that is a contradiction between Sharia or the Quran or Islam and the Constitution is in Islam there isn't taking the fifth. You cannot...
you cannot invoke the Fifth Amendment?
Yeah, because you have to tell the truth, even if it's going to incriminate you or your parents or your family or the ones dear to you, which I find it to be fascinating, because you have to tell the truth. You cannot be trading in children and selling babies to predators, and then when you are asked, you say, I plead the fifth.
Are you talking about... Ghislaine or Maxwell?
Yeah, for instance. She should tell the truth.
She's getting a sweetheart deal, this Maxwell. She can't tell because she probably will get pardoned. And it's so disturbing. And I think, every time you talk about, instead of holding people accountable, and then, just the whole Epstein thing, we need several shows for the rest of the year just to talk about the madness that's happening there. But now we just have less than a minute left. Guys and people, listeners, Sharia is not the problem, Islam is not the problem, and no, Muslims are not trying to push push their laws and their way of life on everyone else. That's not happening in this country. Samar and I and all the Muslims we know, they love the Constitution because it provides religious freedom. You can practice what you want, and there's nothing in the Constitution that says that, you can't be Muslim. I think this is just really horrible. Our fund drive is next week, a week from today. So, and Ramadan is also starting next week around the same time. So wish us luck. We'll see you at the same time, same place next week. This is WMNF Tampa. The Scoop News is next. Have a great weekend.